Hello and welcome. I'm Vanita Dahia, presenting on boosting the immune resilience during infections. Now, we had spoken previously about immune tolerance as well as immune resilience, and today we're talking specifically about immune resilience. In other words, building up the resilience against all infections, not only viruses, but other pathogens such as bacteria, parasites, fungal infections as well. So the precursor to this session is immune tolerance and immune resilience. So you could understand the difference and differentiate between one and the other. So what does it mean to have immune resilience? What exactly do we measure and manage during any form of infections, particularly viral infections? We definitely need immune resilience. In other words, the capacity for the body to build up an adaptive immune system so that it can tolerate creating an immunity, what we call the herd immunity against those microbes. Also, we need to drive down inflammation, and that would also be associated with driving down not only inflammatory markers, cytokine storms, but also driving down the other drivers. Now, whether they be exposures to infections or whether they be huge stresses, we definitely need to support that. And we support that through emotional resilience. So the management is really, look, there are no targeted therapeutics, approved therapeutics or vaccines available for the COVID-19. We know that we need to isolate, self-isolate. We need to avoid contact with potentially infected patients or people. We also need to make sure that we're constantly washing our hands for at least 20 seconds to ensure that we have the appropriate sanitation procedures. And then, of course, if you know that you may be infected, definitely contact a medical professional, and you can also have a look at the coronavirus health information line, phone number being 131450. So the prevention of infections is literally all about, washing hands, staying at home, avoiding close contact. And we've been doing this for a fair while now. But if you're coughing or you're sneezing, before we used to say bless you, but now we run a mile away when somebody coughs or sneezes. We often wear face masks. The problem with face masks is that there are different types of face masks, and we should retain the stocks for our health professionals. We need to clean and disinfect constantly, and obviously stay informed. Look at as the virus, these viruses, they aimed at attacking the lungs. The coronavirus attacks the lungs. It becomes harder and harder for patients to get enough oxygen into their bloodstream to support their kidneys, the liver, and all the various organs, including the nervous system as well. So the management, we mentioned, there are no targeted therapies. We do need to self-isolate. We do need to look at the health information lines. And we also need to ensure that we're doing all the right things in terms of cleaning, disinfecting, staying home, etc. Managing stress is very important. Stress negatively affects the immune system. It's very important to have a decent amount of sleep. If we're not sleeping, we're not repairing and restoring all the organ systems in the body. Exercise keeps the blood flowing, keeps the oxygen flowing into the system. So when a patient is admitted into a hospital setting, we need to monitor all their bloods, their inflammatory markers like CRP, homocysteine, etc., and also have a look at the kidney function. It's really important to make sure that we need to ensure that the patient is using a lot of good nutrients to maintain hydration. bone broths, etc. We need electrolytes to maintain the stability of this internal environment, particularly, masking oxygen, high flow oxygen therapy, etc. We really definitely need to maintain that level. So with regard to prescription medicines, there is a limitation. There's a lot of playing around with some of these therapies. We have used certain antivirals such as ribavirins, antiparasitics such as ivermectin and hydrochloroquine, the alpha interferon nebulizers. These are nebulizers used in a hospital setting. Oxygen therapy is used for severe patients. And so these are your nebulizers, of course, through a nasal catheter. But we also have the exposure and access to hyperbaric oxygen therapy as well as ozone therapy. It's not used as often, but these services are available to really increase oxygenation. Look, we breathing in about 20% oxygen in the air that we breathe in the atmosphere. But when you hit a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, you're actually breathing in 100% oxygen. So if every cell is oxygenated, you will have the capacity to heal the body much quicker. So prescription medicines definitely have their limitation, and it is important for us to be aware that we have access to some of them. They have not been officially approved, but there are many studies out there. Some people have responded positively to hydrochloroquine, others have responded positively to other anti-infective agents, such as your antivirals or antiparasitics, ivermectin being one of them. We know that the coronavirus is really sensitive to the ultraviolet rays, so it actually is inactivated at 56 degrees and can last for up to 30 minutes. So, hypothermia chambers, etc. But 56 degrees is literally cooking oneself. So we know that heat is really good. And this is why drinking a lot of warm water with a bit of lemon in it would make a huge difference. We also know that ethanol or alcohol in your gels, such as your sanitizers, also they are lipid solvents. They're really effective in terms of maintaining and controlling the virus spread. Other agents such as chlorine-containing disinfectants, such antiseptics like chlorhexidine has also been used. We also find that normobaric and hyperbaric oxygen ventilation therapies are also being used. So look, the way to manage or maintain a decent amount of immune resilience is literally by using nutrients, botanicals, plants, vitamins and minerals that will stimulate the immune defense system. It's fighting against the immune system. So we can look into immune enhancing herbs, antioxidants and anti-inflammatories. Why? Antioxidants will reduce that oxidant stress in the body. Anti-inflammatories, your lungs become so inflamed, let alone the lungs, all the other organ systems become inflamed. So we need to drive down that inflammatory cascade. We need to increase your mitochondria, or these organelles in every cell that is involved in generating energy, called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. So we need to then resuscitate and regenerate these mitochondria to prevent that viral associated fatigue. Also manage the stress, because the stress is actually minimizing your sympathetic nervous system activation. So then you get excessive glucocorticoid production. So we need to minimize that infectious susceptibility. As stress goes up, so does cortisol. And so we need to drive down that cortisol production by controlling, managing your sympathetic nervous system overload. That autonomic nervous system overload can then drive your catecholamines, your adrenaline, noradrenaline, dopamine sky high. And managing that stress is very, very important. Now, the reason why we would use immune enhancing support, whether it be herbs, vitamins, etc., is to really stimulate the adaptive immune responses, against all your bugs, all your pathogenic viruses, bacteria, fungi, any infectious control. We need to regulate that. So what are our opportunities available? Zinc is a big one. Zinc is a mineral which is involved in your signaling pathways inside the cell to actually maintain adaptive immunity. It stimulates that immune development. Zinc is needed for so many things. It's needed for maintaining and production of hormones for fertility. It's needed as an antioxidant enzyme to particularly as a cofactor for superoxide dismutase. And so that's basically zinc is needed for conversion of that highly reactive superoxide free radical to a less harmful hydrogen peroxide. So it basically attenuates that oxidative stress. We need to support, zinc supports the development and really the mediation of immune cells via the viral defense system. So how does it do it? It mediates through neutrophils and monocytes and natural killer cells. So it works really effectively in the interferon system. Vitamin C, a lot of media has been released of late in relation to the value and the use of intravenous vitamin C. A number of studies have been done, and your Shanghai Medical Association recommends 100 to 200 milligram per kilo per day. That's based on a study on 300 COVID-19 patients. So IVC there are papers that will denigrate it, there are papers that support it. There's a lot of good support around using a decent amount of vitamin C orally. Of course, we need to take it in our foods, such as oranges, kiwi fruit, and so vegetables, etc. But we need to supplement it orally. But when we're looking specifically at treating a patient with COVID-19, we may want to use IV vitamin C. It stimulates blood cell production. Vitamin C enhances your natural killer cell activity. It increases the level of antibodies to develop that adaptive immune system. Vitamin C reduces the activation, the super activation of that inflammation by inhibiting NOD-like receptor. NOD is nucleotide oligomerization domain. These receptors are really critical in regulating the innate immune system. So we need to drive down that inflammation, and we do that through vitamin C. The mechanisms are quite profound. Vitamin C does not work on its own. Ideally, you use vitamin C with bioflavonoids. You use them with quercetin, rutin, rosehips, or grapeseed extract, etc. And you can get them in a compound made up. Vitamin C enhances the immunity. It supports white cell count. Look, vitamin C is available in all sorts of forms. You can get them in a salt form, such as calcium ascorbate or ascorbic acid on its own. You can get them in a buffered form, so they're more available, so the pH becomes more pH stable, so the body can actually absorb it better. You can have it lipolyzed. In other words, you have a liposomal version of vitamin C so that it can be absorbed internally, or you can have that in the form of a intravenous therapy as well. Generally, vitamin C significantly depresses histamine. Now, we know that histamine, we use antihistamines as an anti-allergy component for your hay fever, etc. Vitamin C depresses that histamine load by destroying the actual histamine ring. So your vitamin C is used ideally with bioflavonoids because they work synergistically with each other. They enhance the absorption. The bioflavonoids enhance the absorption of vitamin C. They also inhibit the oxidation or the degradation and oxidation process, oxidative damage. Quercetin is an excellent nutrient. It is anti-inflammatory. It down-regulates the production of these inflammatory cytokines, as well as inhibits the pro-inflammatory leucolipoxygenases, prostaglandins. Remember, your good oils, they are broken down into the anti-inflammatory as well as the pro-inflammatory versions. The pro-inflammatory, some fats are bad for you, so they convert into the pro-inflammatory prostaglandins. So what we're wanting to do is quercetin actually drives the pro-inflammatory prostaglandins down. So these are the parts of the good oil metabolism. Vitamin C, vitamin C works well with bromelains as well, and bromelains are also found in your fruits. They down-regulate all those inflammatory markers as well. It's really effective for the immune system. It's very similar, actually. Vitamin C is very, very similar to your sugar, glucose molecules. So you need to be aware that vitamin C actually opposes sugar. So in other words, there's a glucose ascorbate antagonism going on. If you have a very high carb-rich diet, in other words, if your diet is really sugar-rich, it'll inhibit the function of vitamin C, and that will then weaken the immune system. So what we're wanting to do is we want to reduce the amount of sugar, because your blood plasma contains a lot of vitamin C, and it can't enter the cells if there's too much glucose or sugar in the blood. So that's the reason why vitamin C is needed as an antagonist towards that high sugar, and you need to cut the sugar out of your diet. So vitamin C has a lot of benefits. Vitamin A, look, vitamin A is needed for all sorts of conditions. It's needed to support methylation. Without vitamin A, our thyroid doesn't work properly. So this is why autoimmune diseases are so high. Vitamin A actually downregulates those inflammatory cytokines, and it plays a really important role in differentiating of your natural killer cells as well as your Th1, the inflammatory markers. So vitamin A is very, very important. Vitamin D is equally important. It plays a role in immune function. We consider it as a vitamin, but in actual fact, in many respects, it's actually a hormone. Vitamin D is activated by an enzyme. The enzyme is 1-alpha hydroxylase. And you'll get an increase in fructose levels if your diet is very rich, if you're fructose intolerant, or your diet is rich in a lot of fructose. Fructose is one of the major 3 sugars. Okay, we've got glucose, galactose, fructose. So fructose is found a lot in our fruits. So if the sugars in the fruit, for example, are really high, it will affect the activation of vitamin D by this particular enzyme, 1-alpha hydroxylase. So fruit consumption can therefore reduce or even stop the conversion of vitamin D into its active forms. So we need to activate vitamin D. We might be taking vitamin D capsules, but they need to be activated in the body. So remember, sugar plays such a major role, including fructose. So vitamin D enhances the adaptive immune responses, it stimulates white cell production, and it neutralizes your viral infestations. Probiotics play an equally important role. Now, probiotics these are your symbionts. They are the good bugs, right? That's the good bugs. When we take a bit of Yakult or we take a probiotic capsule, we're putting the good bugs back in the gut to restore that immune integrity in the gut. And so we have specific strains. Strain-specific probiotics has been shown in the literature to regulate immunity. As a matter of fact, in a double-blind, placebo-controlled study involving over 200 patients over 12 weeks, showed 28% reduction in the duration of their cold. So it's clear that good bugs such as Lactobacillus plantarum, Paracasiae, Rhamnosus, they have the capacity to stimulate the innate immune responses. So they act as anti-inflammatories. They are immunoregulatory. So they are really important. Probiotics are very, very important. And it's important to note that you need to consult with a practitioner in regards to establishing what is the exact probiotic formulation. There are far too many probiotics, and most of them are good multi-strain ones for general use, but the probiotics that are specific for certain conditions must be taken into consideration as immune regulatory ones. Now, herbs play such a vital role in immune resilience. I'll bring your attention to some of the main herbs, and the way to use these herbs, probably the most optimal way to use the herbs is in a liquid extract, because you're getting a concentrated liquid version of these herbs taken orally, and they're being compounded individually for you based on where you're at. But they also often commercially available. A lot of the herbs are commercially available with vitamins. For example, echinacea, astragalus, olive leaf might be available with zinc, vitamin C, and vitamin A, and so forth. So you can get those immune supports all together, or you can use the herbs individually. Elderberry is an antiviral. It's an antimicrobial. It has the anthocyanidins. That's the active component in the elderberry. They inhibit the replication of your influenza A and B. So there's really good studies out there that show that these herbs actually are really powerful anti-infective agents. They also help regulate and mediate your inflammatory. They drive down that inflammation. Picoryza is a herb not used as often as all the others, but they are very beneficial as an immunostimulant. We all know about echinacea, and echinacea is really effective for upper respiratory tract infections. They actually augment the IgG response in an antigen. So you get your antigenic response releases your B cells, your lymphocytes, your B cells, and your T cells, and it triggers an immune response. And echinacea triggers and regulates the IgG response, which we typically would translate it as an intolerance or delayed reaction. Astragalus contains beta-cytosterol. It's a glycoside. It is a really powerful and immune regulator. It supports the immune system by immunomodulation. It's an anti-inflammatory as well as antioxidant. So astragalus is one of the major ones. Nigella seems to be my favorite herb for the immune system. It has antiviral properties. In this particular study, 450 milligrams of Nigella. In Ayurvedic medicine, it's been used, it's called black seeds. In Ayurvedic medicine is also known as Kalonji Oil. And 450 milligrams of this particular herb used three times a day for 3 months improved viral load, has antioxidant capacity, and decreased the fasting blood sugar. Very powerful herb. Andrographis is another very powerful immune regulator, and it's used for upper respiratory tract infections. It relieves the inflammatory cascade associated with sinusitis and rhinitis. It also is active against the influenza H1N1 strain, and it also prevents binding of hemagglutinin to the cells. So look, astragalus is a really powerful, because it actually increases the natural killer cell activity. Excellent herb. The herbs, these are our beautiful medicinal mushrooms, and they, in many respects, they could even be called magic in many ways. The medicinal mushrooms are cordyceps, coriolus, reishi, shiitake mushrooms, and they are very powerful to stimulate your cellular as well as the humoral immunity. It increases the resistance to your virus infections. It activates the innate immune system, and it does this by triggering your natural killer cell activity. It builds up your fight back mechanisms, which are your lymphocytes, neutrophils, macrophages, and all of those. Cytokine synthesis prompts that adaptive immune system to kick in. It produces antibodies. Why? Because it's now starting to, these antibodies then triggers the adaptive immune system, what we call the herd immunity. Coriolis initiates immune cell activation as well as pathogenic recognition. So the other herbs, the other mushroom, members of the mushroom family, like shiitake, has antibacterial effects, antiviral effects, anti-tumor effects. So this is why it's used quite extensively in your cancer therapies. Maitake mushroom is immunomodulatory. It also has the capacity to lower fat, so it lowers the lipid levels. Reishi is a Ganoderma. A lot of more study has been done on the reishi mushroom. It binds to the cell surface receptors of the immune cells. It alters your T helper cells. It alters the natural killer cells. So it has so many activities. It is antibacterial, anti-candida. It's immunomodulatory. It is antioxidant. It's anti-inflammatory. Reishi is fantastic, and it's also used a lot in your cancer therapies. The other immunoregulators, these ones are actually restore what's going on in the gut. It helps, it's like what we call a prebiotic. It's a polysaccharide, larch or arabinogalactone. These are polysaccharides that contain galactose and arabinose. They contain these sugars that are involved in regulating the good bugs in the gut, right? The anaerobes, such as your bifidobacterium lactobacillus, involved in making sure that we've got the right environment for these probiotics to work effectively. So arabinogalactone stimulates the natural killer cell activity. It enhances the functional aspects of the immune system, and it's excellent for the chronic viral infections. Why? Because it's regulating the immune integrity in the mucosal membranes within the gut. Other immune regulators would be your anti-inflammatories such as turmeric, slippery elm, marshmallow, colostrum. These ones all contain really powerful ingredients that have the capacity to regulate that immune integrity of the mucous membrane within the gut. Coconut oil actually contains lauric acid, and so there have been, as a result of so much media around, there's a lot of media around discussing the use of various home remedies for viral infections. Coconut oil in the nasal passages, coconut oil taken orally. These lauric acid is an ingredient in coconut oil. It kills harmful bacteria, fungi, and viruses as well. They inhibit the exotoxins, particularly strep and staph. You can apply it as a nasal moisturizer. You can even use it as an oil pooler, because remember, it is coconut oil, or rather the COVID-19 is spread through nasal mucosa, oral mucosa, like a sneeze or a cough. So using coconut oil lines the oral mucosa with lauric acid. So using it just as you would use a mouthwash, using your coconut oil as a mouthwash, oil in the mouth actually solubilizes both the oil soluble as well as the water soluble toxins in the lymphatics in the mouth. So by giving yourself a good gargle with it and then spitting out, allows those oil and water soluble toxins to be extracted from the lymph tissue in the oral mucosa and expelled. So, and protects the system as well. We did make mention of Kalonji oil, which is your Nigella. It's also known as black caraway or black cumin or black onion seed. It's very powerful antioxidant, many, many actions. Now, of course, you cannot treat any immune system without a decent diet. The diet needs to be nutrient rich. We need to have whole foods. Now, fortunately, we're all housebound during the COVID-19, and it is very important to make sure that your food is nutrient rich. leave out all those processed carbs and have really good quality essential fatty acids. These are the good oils, whole grains, get rid of all those refined starches and sugar. We now know that sugar competes with other nutrients. So definitely make sure that you are removing the sugars as well. Your diet, we need to increase the vitamin needs of the body. So what do we need? We need our methylation support. We need very good leafy green vegetables to stimulate that particular methylation pathways, so that you can start regulating the immune system in many ways. Look, as we age, our hydrochloric acid depletes. We then have imbalances in acidophilus, which really likes acid. So you've got a low hydrochloric acid as we digestive capacity decreases. Then we go to the doctors and we get proton pump inhibitors. But this low acidophilus then likes the acid. And so the microbiome then becomes dysfunctional. There's not enough hydrochloric acid, not enough acidophilus, then the body becomes dysfunctional. The body then becomes immunocompromised. Now, the sugar industry obviously has manipulated branding of products. And sugar really, it harms, it kills the cytokine system. The body obviously tries to heal itself. It unleashes the cytokines by a weakened immune system. So then you get this whole chemical raging to make up and protect, and the body then just starts to attack its own tissue. So using the right diet is very important. You could use Mediterranean diets, ketogenic diets. They basically allows the immune system to become less reactive to foods or environmental triggers. So you actually have a chance for the immune system to actually get healthy, and then you really have some degree of strong defense against different invaders that we're constantly exposed to. So the nutritious diet can involve using herbal teas, particularly warm. Heat actually is very useful for viral infections. Warm water with lemon or with various other herbs. Microbiome enhancing foods to nourish that commensal gut flora, and also need to improve your gut microbiome and diversity. Then also we have discovered that animal offal has been found to contain a lot more. These are your liver, heart, brain, etc. These are animal offals. Those are the organ meats. They are 50 to 100 times higher levels of vitamin C. They're generally heat stable, so it doesn't decrease during cooking. And a traditional Hungarian diet, for example, has a lot of animal fat in their offal, and they need it for the vitamin and energy balance. So it's a really good idea for those that we don't generally eat animal offal, but there are certain cultures that do, and there's obviously good reasons why. We definitely need to support the emotional system as well. We cannot do without, look, any viral infection, you have to lay low, you have to dissociate yourself, you have to keep quiet. And then this leads to a lot of perhaps you may have lost your job, perhaps all these emotional strains, all these cascade of shifts and changes in one's body. One needs to look at it perhaps from a positive perspective, that one has the opportunity to revisit what is important in one's life. But from an emotional perspective, we will then need to look at how do we actually support the emotional nervous system, emotional resilience. How do we support emotional resilience? We do need to put the right amino acids that are contained in our protein foods that will actually stimulate the production of neurotransmitters. You know that vitamin B6 is a vital cofactor for transamination, needed for the production of all your neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, histamine, GABA, etc. Biotin, it's a small vitamin B7, it's involved in cortisol production. So if your stress levels are really high or low and that imbalance in adrenal output, causes changes, we need to put the cofactors that are involved in the production of these neurotransmitters. Vitamin C is very important, but without vitamin C, we cannot convert dopamine to noradrenaline and adrenaline. These are your catecholamines. So we need the vitamin C as a catalyst for dopamine beta hydroxylase in the dopamine production pathway. We need B5 to produce acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is needed for memory, cognition, focus, attention. So we will definitely discuss a lot of the nutrients in a lot more detail under emotional resilience. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me, and see you at the next webinar.